are we allowed to use popular lines from movies inside of our novels? This was a question asked on a live stream this week by an aspiring author who's part of an aspiring author group, and everyone is talking about whether or not they are allowed to use a popular line from Star Wars or if Disney is going to come after them for using that inside of their works. So, of course, we're checking in with everyone's favorite IP and entertainment lawyer, Tony, to find out what exactly we are and are not allowed to do.
My name is Tony Iliakostas. I'm an adjunct professor of entertainment law and IP at New York Law School, and I have an Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok account called The IP Professor that is dedicated to all things intellectual property.
I had a question come up on my live stream yesterday from an aspiring author. She is a part of author groups or aspiring author groups, and a conversation is happening about using a very specific quote that says, "May the force be with you." And they want to know, are they able to use that in association with their books as a title, as a quote in the book, as a reference, without being sued by Disney? Tony, what does that look like?
So I always tell people in situations like this, if you're going to play around with Disney or any major corporation for that matter, the first question you should always ask yourself is, how deep are my pockets? That said, I think there are a variety of different answers to a situation like this. First and foremost, if you're going to use it as a title, that's where it could be probably the most problematic. Now, I've talked about it before. I'm not a hypocrite because I still stand by it. Titles are never protected under copyright law, period. That's a fact. We don't have to ever go into any discussion about that. But where this would potentially be problematic is maybe in the trademark space, because I definitely know that the word "May the Force be with you" is registered as a trademark in the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. And certainly Lucasfilm, which is under the Walt Disney Company now, has registered "May the Force be with you" in a variety of different categories, for social events, for toys, for merchandise, everything under the sun that probably relates to Star Wars that would cover the use of that phrase in some terminology. I would guarantee that there is some type of use of "May the Force be with you," "May the Force be with you" as a trademark in association of classic goods services in the realm of books. I would be confident that that's something that Lucasfilm has at least considered or at least done. So if you're going to do that, and let's say you're writing a book that's called "May the Force be with you," that's going to be in the sci-fi genre, not necessarily a direct quote or a direct, play on Star Wars. Let's say it's something more general to the sci-fi genre. That's something where it could create some likelihood of consumer confusion because you have a false designation of origin. There was actually a case that dealt with kind of this issue. It's the Dostar versus 20th Century case. I think it's Dostar. But it was a case that involved this series that was on World War II. It was a book adaptation that was turned into a TV show called Crusades. And I believe it was called Crusades. And ultimately, the copyright had expired because the 20th Century did not renew the copyright in the U.S. Copyright Office. So it entered the public domain. So in comes another company that decides to take ownership of those clips, rework it into an entirely new series. And then the question became, was there potentially some type of trademark infringement matter, or is it a copyright infringement matter when you have something like this? Now, of course, the copyright expired, so it's not really a copyright matter. This is more of a trademark matter. When you're taking copyrighted works or something that could create some type of false designation of origin, is that something that could be a violation under trademark law? That case basically ruled in a nutshell that the origin source, this campaigns or crusade show, whatever it was called, contained a lot of third-party material that was sourced from the Army, the Navy, and other branches of the military. So technically, the show really contained a great deal of third-party material that if you're going to claim any ownership, that content actually belongs to those entities that licensed out those rights for the use in that specific show. So I think in the same vein, "May the Force be with you," its origin is associated with Lucasfilm. If you're going to use that as a title, that probably could be the Dostar 20th Century Case 2.0 coming to fruition. So I would think very cautiously with something like that. Now, let's contrast this with, let's say, you writing a physics book, "May the Force be with you," the story of Isaac Newton. And it's a physics book, no relation whatsoever to Star Wars. Even though Star Wars has some association to the science realm, but not specifically physics. although you could argue, I'm not going to get into that, but either way, there could be some connection to it, but not a direct link to it. Is that likely to cause consumer confusion? Is that likely to cause some false designation of origin? Maybe, maybe not. I don't. It's the kind of thing where it could be a 50-50 crapshoot at that point, but no guaranteed way of saying one way or another it's going to cause some level of consumer confusion. And one thing to know for everybody that's listening, consumer confusion is the threshold for trademark infringement matters. You can't bring a trademark infringement claim unless you know definitively there could be some evidence of consumer confusion. There's usually an 8-factor test that is used to assess consumer confusion, and a lot of times it's data driven. That's why people hate going into trademark infringement matters, because surveys are expensive. They are very expensive, and you need that hard data in order to assert a valid claim of some type of consumer confusion. So that's the trademark aspect of it with titles. If you were to make a reference to "May the Force be with you" in the context of a book generically, or let's say, you made a reference in a sentence like, my cousin is a Star Wars fan, and before we leave for the weekend, we always say to each other, "May the Force be with you." Like, if it's a general reference like that, it's the kind of thing where it's not really an infringement, because you're kind of making a general reference to it. So that could qualify, not really quite fair use, but it's just something that really wouldn't warrant being infringement, period. Whether you're talking about it in the copyright context or even in the trademark context. So certainly I think a light reference to it in the book is fine like that. But if you're going to make prominent references to "May the Force be with you," and let's say you're doing a whole, let's say, anthology series on Star Wars, that's where you might hit a bit of a roadblock. So like I said, a lot of hypotheticals, a lot of ways that this could play out, but I think the most troublesome way let me reframe it this way. The guaranteed way you're going to get a letter from Disney is if you're going to create a sci-fi genre book, whether it's, let's say, a retelling of a Star Wars story or just general sci-fi that's called "May the Force be with you" as the title, you're asking for it at that point.
That makes a lot of sense. And if people are just writing this as a sentence one character says to another character, completely unrelated and no reference to Star Wars, is that something they're able to do?
Yes, absolutely. That's something that's just, like I said, I don't see any ground for Lucasfilm to stand on to say that warrants any type of infringement, whether you're talking about it in the copyright or trademark space.
Wonderful. And if you have questions on this or anything similar to this, go ahead and drop them down below. Tony is coming back for more episodes to make sure we are staying legally protected inside of the publishing space. And as always, if you have other questions or you just want to hang out with everybody's favorite IP and entertainment lawyer, Tony, where can everybody find you online?
You can find me on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at The IP Professor. And you can check out my brand new entertainment law podcast called End Scene on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
If you have more questions like this, go ahead and drop those down below. But also note that we have a full playlist with Tony where we break down what you can and cannot write into your novels. Everything from brands and stores to lines and titles and lyrics. We've discussed a lot, but we want to make sure we're getting your questions answered as well. So hit up the playlist, see if we've answered your question, and then come back here and let us know what other questions you have about what you can and cannot write inside of your stories, or anything related to the legal side of publishing. We're dropping videos every single day helping you to level up in the publishing space so you can make more money online but spend less time doing it and make this the most profitable year you have inside of your author career. So drop the questions and we'll see you in the next episode.